Hello? I'm glad you're here. Are you feeling settled and ready to drift into a calm story? Let's ease into the quiet world of the past, where the story of coffee slowly began, long before it became the drink we know today. Imagine the soft wind moving over old hills, the dim light of early morning, and the gentle sounds of people going about their daily tasks. This is where our story starts, far back in the highlands of Ethiopia, in a place where the land rises and falls in long waves of green, and where small villages rested between open fields and clusters of trees. Life was simple, steady, and shaped by the rhythms of the sun and the seasons. There were herders moving with their goats across the slopes. These herders knew the land well. They watched the patterns of the sky and the quiet changes in the plants. Among them there is a story often told about a young goatherd, sometimes called Chaldee. Whether Chaldee himself was real or not, his tale reflects something true about how people lived. He spent long days walking with his animals, making sure they had enough to eat, following them along narrow paths, and resting near small streams that cut through the hills. One day, as the story goes, he noticed something unusual. His goats were jumping and moving with strange energy after eating bright red berries from a certain shrub. The animals seemed almost playful, and they stayed lively even as the day grew late. Chaldee had never seen them behave this way, and he wondered what made those berries so different. He watched them again the next day, and the same thing happened. This made him curious. In a quiet moment, when the sun was warm and the goats were calm, he picked a few of the berries for himself. He tasted them, and though they were not sweet, something in them felt alive. Chaldee later shared what he had found with a monk at a nearby monastery. The monks lived in stone buildings that echoed with quiet footsteps. They spent their nights in long hours of prayer, when the world outside was dark and still. Staying awake during those hours was often hard, and they felt the weight of sleep pulling at their bodies. When they tried the berries he brought, they noticed the same thing he had seen in the goats. They felt more alert, more awake, and more able to continue their nightly prayers without drifting into sleep. Slowly, they began to dry the berries, steep them in water, and create an early version of what we now call coffee. The drink changed their nights. Instead of struggling through long hours, the monks found a steady rhythm in their prayers. The warm liquid helped keep their minds clear. It spread quietly from one monastery to another as monks traveled or exchanged goods. Over time, the knowledge of these berries and their effects reached other people who lived across the highlands, moving from one person to the next in simple conversations. Coffee plants grew naturally in Ethiopia's wild forests. People slowly began to cultivate them more intentionally, tending to the shrubs and learning how to use the cherries in different ways. Some boiled the fruit with butter. Others chewed the beans directly. These early forms of coffee were not yet the drink we know today, but they carried the same seed of energy and warmth that would later shape daily life for millions. As people traded across nearby regions, word of the coffee plant reached merchants who traveled toward the Arabian Peninsula. These merchants moved by boat across the Red Sea or followed desert routes with camels. Trade at that time was slow and steady. A journey could take many days, and people carried goods like spices, textiles, incense, and sometimes plants as seeds. When coffee crossed into Yemen, something important began. Yemen had a climate that suited the coffee plant. Farmers there learned how to grow it with care, planting it on terraced hillsides where small streams carried water from the mountains. Yemen became one of the first places where coffee was grown at scale. In small villages, people woke early to tend to the plants. They picked the cherries by hand, drying them in the sun. The air around these villages often carried the faint smell of drying fruit, mixed with dust and earth. When the beans were ready, people roasted them slowly over simple fires. The sound of beans cracking in the heat became a familiar part of daily routine. Over time, people began to crush the roasted beans and boil them in water. The drink was strong, dark, and unlike anything most people had tasted before. It warmed the body and cleared the mind. It also encouraged conversation, and so it brought people together. In cities like Mocha, coffee houses began to appear. These were small, simple places at first. People sat on low benches, talking quietly about news, trade, and ideas. The sound of cups being set down on wooden tables mixed with the murmur of voices. Coffee houses became social centers. Travelers who visited Yemen brought stories of these places back to their homes. Some carried coffee beans with them. Some brought the beans to ports along the Arabian Sea. There, sailors from faraway lands also discovered this new drink. The movement of coffee became tied to trade routes that connected Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. The Ottoman Empire played an important role in coffee's spread. Coffee traveled north to cities like Mecca and Medina, and then farther to Cairo, Damascus, and Istanbul. In these cities, coffee houses grew more common. They became places where people met friends, discussed politics, listened to music, or took a quiet moment alone. Governments sometimes worried that coffee houses encouraged too much talk, especially talk about change. But the drink itself became deeply rooted in daily life. In Istanbul, people roasted coffee in small pans and ground it finely. They brewed it slowly, letting the grounds settle at the bottom of the cup. Families prepared coffee at home, and serving it became a sign of hospitality. When guests arrived, they were offered coffee before much else. It created a pause, a small moment of warmth shared across different homes and cultures. Outside the empire, European travelers returning from the region brought stories of this drink home. They spoke of the rich aroma, the taste, and the social places where people gathered to enjoy it. Curiosity grew, and slowly, coffee began to move into Europe through ports such as Venice. As the warm, fragrant tale of coffee traveled from the bustling streets of Istanbul to the quiet canals of Venice, it found a new kind of home. Imagine the city of Venice in the late 16th century, where water filled the streets and gondolas glided quietly beneath bridges. The air smelled of the sea, of fish markets, and of spices arriving from distant lands. Merchants from the Ottoman Empire brought coffee beans, and some of these beans made their way into small, curious shops. There, people could taste something new, something dark, bitter, and strangely comforting. It was unlike the sweet wines or hot chocolates common in Europe, but it intrigued everyone who tried it. Coffee arrived at a time when Europe was changing. Cities were growing, and people were exploring new ways to think, talk, and share ideas. Universities and small gathering places were emerging, and coffee offered a gentle companion to study, conversation, and reflection. In Venice, the first small cafes opened. They were quiet compared to the lively Ottoman coffee houses, but they carried the same sense of community. People drank slowly, enjoying the warmth in their hands, the aroma rising into the air, and the slight buzz that followed each sip. From Venice, coffee spread to other Italian cities like Rome, Florence, and Naples. Merchants and travelers carried it, sometimes tucked into small wooden boxes or tightly wrapped cloth. Families learned how to roast the beans at home. They used small iron pans over wood fires, carefully shaking the beans until they released a nutty aroma. When the beans were cool, they ground them into a fine powder and brewed the drink in small pots of hot water. In these quiet kitchens, the ritual of coffee began to feel like a daily comfort, a moment of warmth before the work of the day or the quiet of the evening. By the early 17th century, coffee had arrived in France. Paris, with its elegant streets and small apartments stacked one on top of the other, became another stage in the story of this drink. Imagine narrow, cobblestone lanes, street vendors calling softly as the morning mist lifted, and the faint sound of horses' hooves on stone. In Paris, the first cafes opened near universities, attracting students, scholars, and writers. They sat at small tables, sipping coffee while discussing ideas quietly. Here, coffee became not just a drink, but a companion to thought. The soft warmth in each cup seemed to sharpen the mind, just enough to hold long conversations, to ponder questions, and to share gentle laughter over small joys. Coffee also reached England during this period. London, a city of tall chimneys and winding streets, welcomed the drink with curiosity. At first, coffee was considered exotic, an interesting novelty. But soon, small coffee houses opened across the city. People came for more than the drink. They came for the quiet energy it brought. These coffee houses became hubs for news, politics, and commerce. Gentlemen and merchants sat together, reading letters, counting coins, or quietly sharing stories from distant lands. The aroma of roasted beans mingled with the faint smell of wood smoke and polished floors. These spaces were calm but lively at the same time, offering a slow rhythm to the passing day. Meanwhile, in the Netherlands, the story of coffee was taking another turn. The Dutch had long been traders, traveling to Asia and Africa. They discovered coffee in the port city of Mocha and brought seeds back to their own colonies, particularly in Indonesia. Java, an island with humid forests and volcanic soil, proved perfect for growing coffee. Farmers learned to cultivate the plants, tending to rows of shrubs, picking cherries by hand, and carefully drying the beans under the sun. The Dutch East India Company traded these beans widely, sending them to Europe and planting the roots of coffee as a global commodity. As coffee travelled across Europe, it became part of daily life. In households, women learned to prepare it carefully. They measured the water, watched the beans roast, and brewed slowly over fires or in small kettles. The drink became associated with morning rituals, quiet evenings, and small gatherings of friends. It was a gentle pause in a world that often moved quickly, a moment to slow down, breathe, and enjoy something warm. Across the Atlantic, coffee was beginning its journey to the Americas. European colonists brought beans with them, planting them in tropical regions where the climate suited the shrubs. In the Caribbean, islands such as Martinique and Saint-Domingue began cultivating coffee extensively. Planters carefully nurtured the plants, tending to the soil and harvesting the cherries by hand. The work was steady, the sun warm on the skin, and the rhythm of the fields mirrored the slow passage of time. Coffee became more than a commodity. It became part of the landscape, a quiet presence in the daily lives of the people who grew it. In Brazil, the story of coffee found fertile ground. Portuguese settlers introduced the plant in the early 18th century, and over the decades, Brazil's vast landscapes proved perfect for large-scale cultivation. Gentle hills, long rivers, and stretches of rich soil created ideal conditions. Farmers learned to transplant young shrubs carefully to protect them from harsh sun or heavy rain, and to harvest the cherries at the right moment, when they were bright red and full of flavour. The work was often slow and repetitive, but the rhythm of tending the plants created a deep connection between people and the land. Coffee plantations became small communities in themselves. Workers moved through the rows of plants with baskets in hand, carefully picking cherries and setting them aside for drying. Families often lived nearby, their days shaped by the rising sun and the work of the fields. Coffee was not yet the drink of choice for everyone, but for those who prepared it and shared it, it was a source of comfort, a warm ritual at the beginning and end of the day. By the 18th century, coffee had become a global habit. European ships carried beans across oceans, bringing them to ports in North America, Asia, and Africa. Coffee houses appeared in colonial cities like Boston and Philadelphia. Gentlemen and women would gather at small tables, sharing news, reading newspapers, and enjoying the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Families prepared it carefully at home, savouring a slow morning cup before setting out to the fields, workshops, or markets. Coffee had moved far from its highland origins in Ethiopia, yet it retained a quiet intimacy wherever it travelled. In the Ottoman Empire, the coffee ritual continued to flourish. In cities like Damascus and Cairo, small cafes remained central to community life. People discussed poetry, philosophy, or local affairs, their cups steaming in their hands. The drink had become part of daily rhythm, shaping the way people connected with one another. Similarly, in Europe, coffee houses were more than places to drink. They were places to think, to slow down, and to reflect. Writers, scholars, and everyday people found a calm energy in coffee that helped them focus on their work, their ideas, or simply a quiet moment alone. As coffee spread worldwide, its cultivation, preparation, and enjoyment evolved. New methods emerged with care, grinding finely, brewing slowly. Each culture adapted the drink to its own tastes and habits. In France, coffee was often enjoyed with sugar and milk in quiet cafes or home kitchens. In England, it became the foundation for social life in coffee houses. In the Americas, it was prepared in simple pots over fires, sometimes strong and black, other times sweetened with local ingredients. Yet everywhere, coffee carried the same gentle warmth, the same quiet energy, and the same sense of pause that had first drawn monks in the Ethiopian highlands. Even in the quieter, everyday moments, coffee played a role. Farmers tended plants, students studied by candlelight, and families shared morning cups. The smell of roasting beans or freshly brewed coffee became a signal for comfort, a gentle mark of the passing hours. Travelers across continents carried beans tucked into their belongings, spreading the plant and the ritual of coffee to new lands, new cultures, and new people. By the 19th century, coffee had become a central part of life in many countries. In cities across Europe and the Americas, it was available in cafes, shops and homes. In tropical regions, plantations worked steadily, producing vast amounts of beans for a growing global demand. The drink inspired social gatherings, intellectual discussions, and quiet reflection. It offered a gentle companion to the rhythms of daily life. A warm pause in a busy world, a shared moment with friends, or a quiet cup at the start of a new day. And so, coffee continued its journey, spreading slowly but steadily across oceans, continents and generations, from small highland villages in Ethiopia to the bustling streets of Istanbul, the canals of Paris, the cafes of Paris, the plantations of Brazil, and the homes of countless families worldwide. Coffee became a quiet, constant presence. It reminded people to pause, to breathe, and to enjoy a small, warm moment amid the steady flow of life. At this point, we can linger on the simple, steady image of coffee as it shaped human routines, communities, and habits across the world. Imagine a small cup in a quiet morning, the gentle aroma rising, the warmth spreading through your hands, and the calm, slow rhythm of the day unfolding around you. As the 19th century progressed, coffee had already become a familiar companion in many parts of the world, but its journey was far from finished. Across Europe and the Americas, new ways of preparing, serving, and enjoying coffee emerged. Each region added its own touch, blending local habits, tastes, and resources with the simple joy of the warm, aromatic drink. The morning cup, the quiet pause in a bustling day, and the social energy of coffee houses became traditions that would last for centuries. In France, coffee culture continued to flourish. Parisian cafes were small but elegant spaces, often filled with the soft murmur of conversation and the faint clinking of cups on porcelain saucers. Gentlemen and ladies alike found themselves drawn to these cafes not only for the drink, but also for the calm sense of community they offered. Writers sat for hours with paper before them, occasionally lifting their cups to sip the rich, dark liquid and find inspiration. Scholars and artists discussed their latest works, and the slow passage of time in these cafes offered a sense of order and reflection amid the city's energy. The preparation of coffee became more refined. People learned to roast beans carefully, controlling the heat to bring out the subtle flavors hidden within each tiny seed. Grinding became a precise art, producing powders fine enough to release all the aroma when hot water met the grounds. Brewing methods varied from home to home, cafe to cafe, but the underlying ritual remained the same, a deliberate, gentle process that created a moment of calm in the midst of daily life. Families at home would gather around small tables, sometimes with bread, butter, or sweet pastries, sharing quiet conversation and the comfort of warmth. In England, coffee houses continued to thrive. London was a city of movement and commerce, where merchants, artisans, and thinkers often met to share ideas. Coffee became a bridge between people of different walks of life. Gentlemen discussed trade, politics, and news, while writers and artists found a space to reflect and create. These coffee houses had a rhythm all their own, the soft scraping of chairs on stone floors, the faint hiss of steam from freshly brewed coffee, the low murmur of conversation blending with the distant sounds of the city outside. In this calm environment, ideas could flow, friendships could form, and daily routines could find a gentle cadence. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the United States embraced coffee in its own way. The early 19th century saw coffee become a central part of domestic life. Families prepared coffee each morning, often strong and black, savouring the warmth before setting out for work or school. Small inns and taverns offered coffee to travellers and locals alike. In quiet homes, coffee became a companion to reading, writing, or simple reflection. As the country expanded westward, the ritual of coffee travelled with settlers, becoming a small but steady comfort amid the long, hard days on the frontier. In the Americas, coffee cultivation was also expanding. The warm, fertile lands of Central and South America allowed for large-scale plantations. In Brazil, coffee production grew steadily, and the country became the leading supplier of coffee to the world. Plantations were vast and organized, with careful attention given to planting, watering, and harvesting the shrubs. Workers moved through the fields, hands skilled in picking the cherries at the perfect moment, ensuring that each batch would produce a flavorful and aromatic beverage. Life on the plantations was measured by the sun, the work rhythm, and the quiet satisfaction of tending to the land. Elsewhere, the Dutch continued to cultivate coffee in Indonesia, particularly on the island of Java. The tropical climate and rich volcanic soil created ideal conditions. Small communities of farmers cared for the plants with patience, learning the subtle differences in soil, water, and sun that affected each harvest. The beans were processed carefully, dried under the sun, and shipped across the oceans to Europe. The trade routes that had begun centuries earlier now moved vast quantities of coffee across continents, creating a slow, steady global network built around the simple desire for this warm, energizing drink. In the quieter corners of daily life, coffee became a ritual that shaped routines, traditions, and even moments of reflection. Imagine a small kitchen in a European village. A mother kneads dough for bread, while a pot of coffee simmers slowly on the hearth. The aroma fills the room, rising to meet the morning light as it streams through a small window. A father pours 2 cups, steam curling gently upward, and the family shares a quiet breakfast before beginning their day. In another home, perhaps in a colonial city in the Americas, a similar scene unfolds. Coffee is brewed over a small fire, the liquid poured into simple mugs, and a brief moment of calm allows the day to begin with warmth and focus. Across the oceans, coffee houses continued to serve as quiet centers of culture and conversation. In Istanbul, Cairo, and Damascus, small cafes offered a space for reflection, discussion, and shared experience. In Paris, Vienna, and London, coffee houses remained vital hubs of intellectual life, where ideas flowed as freely as the steam from the cups. These spaces shared a common rhythm, the soft scrape of chairs, the low hum of conversation, and the gentle clink of porcelain or glass. Coffee was more than a drink, it was a companion to thought, creativity, and the simple joy of being present. By the mid-19th century, coffee had begun to inspire technological change. People sought ways to brew more efficiently, to roast more evenly, and to grind with greater precision. In Europe, inventors developed new coffee machines, some powered by steam, others designed to control temperature carefully. The slow, gentle rituals of earlier centuries were complemented by innovation, allowing more people to enjoy the warmth and aroma of coffee without losing the calm, reflective quality of the experience. Meanwhile, in the Americas, coffee culture continued to grow. Small cafes and inns served travelers, merchants, and local communities. Families at home maintained their morning rituals, preparing coffee with care and sharing moments of calm before the work of the day began. Plantation life continued, the rhythm of planting, tending, and harvesting, creating a steady flow of coffee beans to meet global demand. Coffee was not just a product, it had become a habit, a ritual, and a gentle companion to everyday life. In the latter half of the 19th century, coffee became increasingly accessible to more people. Global trade expanded, shipping became faster and more reliable, and urban centers grew. People could find coffee in homes, cafes, and markets, and its presence became a small, steady comfort in the midst of bustling cities, quiet villages, and rural landscapes. The simple act of preparing and sharing coffee offered a moment of pause, a small ritual that connected people across continents and cultures. By the turn of the 20th century, coffee had become truly global. From the highlands of Ethiopia to the cities of Europe, the plantations of Brazil and Central America, and the homes and cafes of countless countries, coffee was everywhere. Its journey had been slow, patient, and steady, shaped by the people who discovered it, cultivated it, and shared it with others. The drink that had first energized herders in Ethiopia now touched millions of lives daily, offering warmth, comfort, and a gentle, focused energy. Through every generation, coffee remained a companion to daily life. In quiet mornings, it marked the start of a new day. In bustling cities, it offered a pause amid the noise. In small villages and distant plantations, it connected people to the land and to the steady rhythm of work. In cafes, it fostered conversation, reflection, and community. And everywhere, the aroma of roasting beans and freshly brewed coffee carried a quiet promise, a small moment of warmth, a gentle pause, a steady presence in a changing world. As we drift further into the story, imagine the soft clinking of cups, the gentle hiss of steam, the warmth spreading through your hands, and the calm, steady rhythm of life unfolding around you. Picture the generations of people, past and present, whose lives have been touched by this simple, extraordinary drink. Every sip tells a discovery of patience, of curiosity, and of the slow, steady spread of a habit that would become global. And so, coffee continued its journey into the 20th century, evolving with new technologies, spreading through cities and continents, and embedding itself more deeply into daily life. Instant coffee was developed, making the drink faster and easier to prepare. Cafes continued to grow, becoming cultural landmarks in cities across Europe, North America, and beyond. Families maintained morning rituals, workers carried mugs to offices, and travelers brought beans to new lands. Each cup was a quiet moment of continuity, a shared ritual linking people across time and space. As the 20th century progressed, coffee's presence in daily life grew stronger than ever. Imagine cities waking slowly in the soft morning light, streets still quiet, shops opening one by one, and the gentle aroma of coffee beginning to drift through windows and doorways. In homes, small kitchens were filled with the quiet sounds of brewing water poured into pots, beans gently ground, the soft hiss of steam rising. Families, neighbors, and friends shared these moments, their cups warm in their hands, the rich fragrance curling upward. During this time, coffee became not just a drink, but an essential part of the rhythm of modern life. Office workers would start their days with a steaming cup, the warmth and gentle caffeine awakening them for tasks ahead. Factory workers carried thermoses to their shifts, sipping quietly in small breaks, finding comfort in the familiar ritual. Students prepared coffee late into the night, helping them focus as they studied by lamplight or desk lamp. Even as life became faster, coffee offered a steady moment of pause, a bridge between effort and rest, a small comfort in a changing world. In Europe, cafes evolved further. Paris, Vienna, and Rome continued their tradition of small, quiet spaces where people could gather. But now, cafes also became cultural hubs for the new century. Writers, poets, and artists lingered over long cups, discussing the latest ideas and works. Gentle conversations flowed slowly, sometimes pausing as someone lifted their cup to inhale the rich aroma. the sound of soft laughter, faint music from nearby pianists, and the clinking of spoons against cups blended into a quiet symphony of urban life. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, in the United States, coffee became a symbol of daily routine and comfort. With the rise of urban centers, workers needed something that could be prepared quickly but still offered warmth and reassurance. Home coffee makers and percolators made this possible, and families began to organize their mornings around a shared cup. In diners and small cafes, coffee became a centerpiece, a hot drink that accompanied simple breakfasts, quiet conversation, and the gentle start to the day. Roadside cafes served travelers crossing long highways, offering a brief pause and a comforting cup before the journey continued. The production of coffee also expanded in this period. In Brazil, plantations continued to grow and the scale of cultivation increased dramatically. Farmers tended to vast fields with care, watching over every stage: planting, watering, and drying. In Central America, similar growth occurred. Coffee was now a significant part of the economy, a commodity that connected distant countries through trade, shipping, and markets. Plantation life remained measured by the sun, the seasons, and the slow rhythm of cultivation. Workers moved through the fields, hands skilled at picking only the ripest cherries. Each harvest was a quiet, steady effort, producing beans that would soon travel across oceans and continents. Technological innovation in coffee production and preparation advanced alongside its cultural spread. New machines allowed coffee to be roasted more evenly, ground more finely, and brewed more efficiently. Espresso machines were developed, particularly in Italy, offering a concentrated form of coffee that was rich, strong, and aromatic. Baristas learned the delicate balance of pressure, temperature, and grind, creating drinks that were at once simple and sophisticated. Coffee culture began to diversify. Some preferred the slow, deliberate brew in a French press, while others enjoyed the quick, intense espresso. Each method reflected different ways people connected with the ritual, savoring warmth, aroma, and flavor in their own time and space. In cities like Vienna, the coffeehouse tradition became almost ceremonial. People lingered over layered drinks, small pastries, and newspapers, absorbing the quiet rhythm of their surroundings. Families, friends, and strangers shared tables, creating connections over a warm cup. The scent of roasting beans mingled with the aroma of fresh bread and chocolate, enveloping cafes in a comforting atmosphere. In these spaces, time seemed to slow, offering a gentle pause amid the city's energy. In the United States, the 20th century also saw the rise of commercial coffee brands. Ground coffee in cans became widely available, making it easy for families to prepare coffee at home without the need for extensive roasting or grinding. This convenience allowed coffee to become a daily habit for millions, woven into the morning routines, workdays, and social gatherings of the modern era. Coffee was no longer just a regional or elite beverage. It was a shared experience, connecting people across towns, cities, and countries. In addition to daily life, coffee became part of cultural identity. In Italy, espresso bars became social hubs, small places where friends met for brief, but meaningful pauses. In France, the leisurely café experience remained a symbol of reflection, conversation, and cultural engagement. In the United States, diners, coffee shops, and workplaces integrated coffee into the pace of life, making it both a companion to work and a shared social experience. The drink was now both personal and communal, a small ritual that crossed borders, languages, and lifestyles. The spread of coffee also carried subtle changes in taste and ritual. In North America, lighter roasts became popular, sometimes sweetened with sugar or milk. In Europe, darker, more robust roasts continued to dominate. Across continents, people experimented with flavors, brewing methods, and serving styles. Yet, despite these differences, the underlying pattern remained: coffee offered warmth, alertness, and a quiet, reflective pause in daily life. During the mid-20th century, coffee culture began to reach more remote corners of the world. Countries in Asia, Africa, and Oceania began to cultivate and consume coffee in new ways. Small communities planted the shrubs in tropical climates, tending to the delicate beans with care. Markets in cities from Tokyo to Nairobi offered freshly roasted coffee alongside local foods, integrating the drink into daily routines and social customs. Coffee houses appeared in urban centers, offering spaces for conversation, study, and calm enjoyment. Even in areas where tea had traditionally dominated, coffee found a place, slowly establishing its ritual and influence. In Brazil, the 20th century brought both technological and social change in coffee production. Mechanization allowed for more efficient planting and harvesting, while small communities continued traditional practices alongside modern methods. Families involved in cultivation maintained a close connection to the land, understanding the rhythms of growth, harvest, and processing. The scent of drying beans, the sun-warmed fields, and the gentle work of tending plants connected people to the slow, steady history of coffee cultivation that had begun centuries earlier in distant lands. In Europe and North America, post-war decades saw coffee become a ubiquitous feature of daily life. Urbanization, workplace routines, and social habits all reinforced the role of coffee. Families drank it at home, colleagues shared it at work, and friends met over it in cafes. Coffee's simple warmth, gentle energy, and comforting aroma made it a quiet companion in moments of reflection, work, and social interaction. The drink had evolved from a rare, exotic commodity into an integral part of life for millions, across continents and cultures. By the late 20th century, coffee had become a truly global phenomenon. Specialty cafes emerged, offering diverse brewing methods, single origin beans, and carefully curated experiences. People savored coffee slowly, exploring flavor profiles, origins, and preparation techniques. Coffee culture became a bridge across time, connecting the small highland villages of Ethiopia, the bustling Ottoman cafes, European salons, and modern urban centers around the world. Each cup carried a piece of history, a reminder of the long, patient journey that had brought coffee from its humble origins to homes, cafes, and workplaces across the globe. In homes, workplaces, and cafes, the ritual of coffee remained deeply personal. Morning cups offered a quiet start to the day. Afternoon breaks provided a pause in a busy schedule. Evenings sometimes featured a shared cup, a warm moment to reflect on the day or enjoy company. Across continents, people maintained small habits that echoed the early rituals of monk and traders: roasting, grinding, brewing, and savoring a simple, warm, energizing drink. Coffee's influence extended beyond individual moments. It shaped urban life, work culture, and social interaction. Cities developed spaces where people could gather over coffee, from cafes and bars to offices and meeting rooms. Coffee became part of rituals that marked time, morning routines, breaks during the day, late night work, and moments of quiet reflection. In each cup, people carried forward a tradition centuries old, connecting them to the rhythms of life, work, and social interaction that coffee had shaped across generations. Even today, coffee remains a gentle companion. Its presence is felt in quiet homes, bustling cafes, workplaces, and remote villages alike. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee evokes calm, warmth, and familiarity. Its ritual continues to offer a small moment of pause, a bridge between the past and the present, and a shared experience across cultures and generations. The slow journey of coffee, from wild shrubs in the Ethiopian highlands to global habit, from quiet monasteries to urban cafes, remains a story of patience, discovery, and human connection. Imagine now a quiet morning, the soft light spilling over a table where a cup of coffee rests. The steam curls upward, carrying with it centuries of history. Each sip carries echoes of distant lands, distant times, and countless people who cultivated, traded, and cherished this simple, warm drink. Every cup is a small connection to the past, a gentle reminder of the long, steady journey that made coffee a part of daily life across the world. And so, as you sit or lie quietly, imagine the aroma rising, the warmth spreading through your hands, and the calm, steady rhythm of life unfolding around you. Picture the monks in Ethiopia, The merchants in Yemen, the cafe patrons in Istanbul and Paris, the families in New York and Sao Paulo, all connected through the simple ritual of coffee. Every cup carries a story, a pause, a quiet moment of reflection that has travelled centuries and continents to be with you now. By the beginning of the 21st century, coffee had become more than a daily ritual. It had become a global habit, embedded in cultures, economies, and private moments in ways that were both simple and profound. Across the world, people began to experience coffee in new forms, yet the calm, personal connection to each cup remained unchanged. The small villages in Ethiopia, where the journey had started centuries earlier, still celebrated coffee, often in traditional ceremonies. Families roasted beans over open fires, crushed them with a mortar, and brewed them slowly in small pots. Guests were welcomed with care, and the aroma of coffee filled the home long before the first sip was taken. This age-old ritual connected the present to the past, reminding people that the simple act of sharing coffee was both intimate and meaningful. In the cities of Europe, coffee culture had evolved into a rich variety of experiences. Cafes were no longer only for scholars, writers, or merchants. They were spaces for people of all walks of life. In Vienna, the tradition of leisurely sipping coffee while reading newspapers or discussing art persisted, but new waves of customers brought new rhythms. Young professionals might pause in the middle of their day, taking a quiet moment to enjoy the scent and warmth of freshly brewed espresso. Couples lingered over cappuccinos, talking softly, while the clinking of spoons and gentle hum of conversation filled the air. Even as life outside accelerated with technology, traffic, and schedules, these cafes offered a slow, steady heartbeat, a connection to centuries of habit. Across the Atlantic, in the United States, coffee experienced its own cultural transformation. Convenience, technology, and commerce converged to shape the way people experience the drink. Home drip coffee makers, designed to brew multiple cups at once, became household staples. People measured water and grounds with care, watching as the liquid dripped into a waiting pot, releasing a rich aroma into the kitchen. Office culture embraced coffee. Fully break rooms offered a steady supply. Workers carried thermoses to desks, and coffee became both a ritual and a companion to productivity. Even in the quiet of early morning, before the city had fully awakened, coffee marked a personal pause, a gentle, warm moment of calm before the day moved forward. The rise of specialty coffee in the late 20th and early 21st centuries transformed coffee into a more intentional, reflective experience. People began to explore single-origin beans, appreciating the subtle differences in flavor, aroma, and texture that reflected the regions and climates where the beans were grown. Farmers in Colombia, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Guatemala cultivate coffee with attention to detail, understanding that altitude, soil, and rainfall created unique profiles in each bean. Roasters experimented with temperature, time, and technique to bring out these nuances. In cafes around the world, baristas learn to master precise methods: the delicate pour over, the slow drip, the concentrated espresso, or the gentle siphon brew. Each cup became an experience, a mindful moment of connection to the land, the farmer, and the history that had carried coffee across centuries. At the same time, coffee's cultural influence spread in new directions. Coffee shops became places for more than drinking. They were spaces for creativity, study, and social connection. In Tokyo, small cafes offered quiet spaces for reflection or focused work. In Nairobi, cafes became meeting points for artists and students, blending local culture with the global tradition of coffee. In Sao Paulo, coffee shops were filled with families, friends, and colleagues enjoying a shared pause during the day. Across continents, the same simple ritual, the preparation and sharing of a warm cup, remained a gentle constant amid the rapid pace of modern life. Even in remote areas, coffee became a daily companion. Travelers in the mountains of Colombia sipped freshly brewed coffee while gazing across valleys. Farmers in Indonesia paused mid-harvest to enjoy a brief cup of warmth. and students in Cairo shared espresso during quiet study sessions. The global habit of coffee connected people to one another and to centuries of tradition, linking modern routines with the slow, deliberate rhythms of the past. Technology also shaped the modern coffee experience. Coffee machines, once limited to homes and cafes, became precise instruments capable of creating consistent, high-quality beverages. Single-serve capsules allowed individuals to brew a perfect cup in minutes, while traditional espresso machines in cafes highlighted the skill and artistry of baristas. People could now access coffee in countless forms: iced, steamed, foamed, flavored, or pure. Yet each method preserved the comforting ritual at the heart of the habit. The warmth, aroma, and gentle energy remained, offering continuity amid rapid change. In addition to everyday life, coffee also became a marker of social connection and cultural identity. People gathered to share moments, celebrate achievements, or find solace in quiet reflection. In urban centers, cafe culture became a symbol of lifestyle, creativity, and community. In small towns and villages, coffee continued as a private, intimate ritual. Across continents, families preserved their morning routines, friends paused mid-afternoon, and individuals savored a quiet cup before sleep. Coffee had become both public and personal, a habit that shaped the rhythm of life in ways large and small. The environmental and economic impact of coffee also became more visible in the 21st century. Consumers began to pay closer attention to how their coffee was grown and traded. Fair trade, organic certification, and sustainable cultivation practices emerged as people sought to support farmers and protect ecosystems. Small-scale farmers and cooperatives worked with care, ensuring that each bean was harvested at the peak of ripeness, dried with attention, and prepared for export with quality in mind. From the hills of Ethiopia to the volcanic soils of Indonesia, these practices reflected a new awareness coffee was not only a habit and pleasure, it was also a connection to land, labor, and global responsibility. Cultural expressions of coffee also expanded. In music, literature, film, and art, coffee became a symbol of calm, reflection, and connection. Artists captured the ritual of the morning cup, writers described the quiet pause of a cafe, and filmmakers used coffee to anchor moments of intimacy, thought, or conversation. Across mediums, coffee carried a subtle message that a small, steady habit could offer comfort, clarity, and connection even in a fast-moving, complex world. In modern urban landscapes, the coffeehouse became a space where technology and tradition merged. People brought laptops to tables, streaming music softly in the background, while steaming cups of coffee reminded them of centuries-old rituals. Smartphones and Wi-Fi allowed for global connectivity, yet the act of sipping a warm drink preserved a sense of grounded calm. Across the world, cafes blended the slow pace of coffee rituals with the fast pace of modern life, creating spaces where individuals could pause, reflect, or share moments with others. The social and emotional significance of coffee continued to grow. Early in the morning, people could find quiet comfort in a first cup, the warmth spreading through their hands and chest. At midday, coffee offered a gentle lift, a way to continue through tasks with steady focus. In the evening, it provided reflection, pause, or companionship. Across cultures, the habit remained constant, a slow, comforting presence in moments of work, study, leisure, or socialization. Even the smallest details mattered. The way steam rose from the cup, the sound of a spoon against porcelain, the subtle difference between beans from Ethiopia or Guatemala, all contributed to a sense of connection and presence. Coffee became more than a drink. It became a ritual of mindfulness, a way to mark time, a gentle companion to human life. In offices, homes, cafes, and quiet corners, people continued to experience the calm that coffee offered, preserving a habit that had traveled centuries and continents to reach them. The global scale of coffee consumption in the 21st century is remarkable. From bustling cities to quiet villages, people embraced the drink. Farmers, roasters, and baristas maintained centuries-old traditions while integrating modern techniques. Coffee became a shared language linking diverse cultures through a simple habit, preparation, aroma, warmth, and enjoyment. The journey that had begun with herders in the Ethiopian highlands now touched millions of people each day, connecting generations, landscapes, and continents. In many ways, coffee shaped not only routines but also perception of time. People measured moments by coffee. Morning cups marked the start of the day, afternoon breaks signaled a quiet pause, and evening sips offered reflection. Cafes became landmarks of culture, education, and conversation. Coffee was both a personal companion and a social anchor, bridging individuals and communities across space and generations. By the mid-21st century, innovations in coffee continued. Sustainable packaging, eco-friendly production, and new brewing technologies allowed people to enjoy the drink in ways that were both mindful and convenient. Coffee remained a ritual, a small moment of calm in lives that were often busy and complex. Its history, from wild Ethiopian shrubs to a global habit, remained alive in every cup, reminding drinkers of the journey, care, and quiet attention that had carried coffee across centuries. Throughout the world, coffee continues to be a companion, a ritual, and a bridge. In small villages, it preserves tradition. In urban centres, it offers pause and reflection. In cafes, it connects people socially, culturally, and emotionally. Families, friends, and strangers alike share the warmth of a cup, carrying forward a habit that has endured for centuries, connecting them to history, land, and one another. The journey of coffee is a story of patience, curiosity, and human connection. From the hills of Ethiopia to Yemen, across the Ottoman Empire, Europe, the Americas, and beyond, coffee travelled slowly, deliberately, and with care. It shaped routines, fostered social connections, inspired creativity, and provided comfort. In the modern world, its presence continues to mark the rhythms of life, offering warmth, reflection, and steady companionship to millions every day. Yet, even as coffee became a global presence, filling cafes, homes, and offices across continents, it never lost its power to create quiet, deeply personal moments. While cities buzzed with movement, traffic, and conversation, there were always small pockets of stillness, moments when a single cup could slow the rhythm of life. In a tiny apartment, the morning sun might spill across a table where a young writer slowly poured hot water over freshly ground beans, inhaling the subtle aroma as the liquid began to swirl. Outside, the city moved quickly, but inside that apartment, time seemed to stretch, offering a pause, a gentle space to breathe, reflect, and prepare for the day. Across the world, similar moments unfolded, each unique yet connected by the same ritual. A farmer in the hills of Colombia carefully measured water for a small, steaming pot. The faint scent of roasted beans mixed with the cool morning air. A mother in Paris cradled a cup, listening to the quiet murmur of her children waking in the next room. A student in Tokyo took a brief break from study, leaning back in a chair as the rich liquid eased focus and clarity. These personal experiences were as varied as the people themselves, yet each echoed centuries of history, a lineage tracing back to the first herders who noticed unusual energy in their goats, to the monks who transformed berries into a drink that carried warmth and alertness through the night. In these intimate spaces, coffee became more than a habit. It became a companion, a comforting presence that shaped human experience in subtle, almost invisible ways. Its warmth could calm a restless mind. Its aroma could mark a transition from sleep to wakefulness, work to pause, or stress to reflection. Even the act of preparing coffee, the grinding of beans, the careful pouring of hot water, the rising steam, offered a rhythm that grounded people in the present. It was a quiet ritual, unhurried and deliberate, reminding us that some of life's most meaningful moments are small, personal, and shared with only ourselves. Yet coffee also continued to connect people, not just in cafes or social spaces, but across the most unexpected moments of daily life. Imagine a commuter on a quiet train in New York, hands wrapped around a thermos of steaming coffee. The hum of the tracks, the soft chatter of fellow passengers, and the occasional rustle of a newspaper create a rhythm. And the simple act of sipping brings a moment of calm. In Sao Paulo, a street artist pauses between canvases, taking a cup from a small cafe to steady the hand and mind. In Nairobi, a student studies for exams in a dimly lit room, letting the warmth of coffee carry focus and patience through the night. Across the world, countless individuals participate in the same ritual, yet each moment is private, personal, and quietly transformative. With the expansion of specialty coffee in the 21st century, these moments grew even richer. People began to explore subtle differences in beans, understanding how altitude, climate, and processing methods influenced flavor. From lightly roasted Ethiopian beans with floral notes to dark, robust Sumatran coffee with earthy depth, the variations offered a journey of taste as well as warmth. Brewing techniques evolve, allowing the ritual itself to become an experience, the gentle drip of water in a pour over, the slow infusion of a French press, the precise extraction of an espresso shot. Each method created not only flavor but also space. A pause, a small meditation on warmth, aroma, and history. Even as technology made coffee preparation faster and more convenient, these personal rituals endured. Single-serve capsules, automatic espresso machines, and high-speed grinders allowed for efficiency, yet people continued to savor the small details. The smell of coffee filling the air, the sound of liquid pouring into a cup, the gentle swirl before the first sip. In a world of constant movement, coffee offered a slow, grounding rhythm. It reminded people that even the simplest habit, a warm drink held in both hands, could anchor the mind and spirit. Coffee's influence also extended to human relationships. Friends met over cups in quiet cafes, colleagues gathered around shared pots in workplaces, and families began the day together with warmth in their hands and conversation in their hearts. Each shared moment, no matter how brief, carried centuries of tradition. These interactions were small yet profound, the clink of a spoon against porcelain, the subtle lift of aroma into the air, and the gentle exchange of words all built human connection. Coffee, in this sense, was both personal and communal, a quiet bridge linking lives across space and time. At the same time, coffee offered reflection and introspection. Early mornings or late evenings often became times of private thought, where the drink acted as a companion to contemplation. Writers, artists, and thinkers around the world maintained the same quiet ritual that monks had observed centuries before, a beverage that sharpened awareness, brought warmth, and offered focus. In small kitchens, cafes, or dimly lit apartments, people found the calm they needed to think, create, or simply rest. Even the act of sharing coffee with oneself could be transformative, a gentle acknowledgement of presence, of patience, of the slow unfolding of time. Across global cities, modern coffee culture embraced this duality of community and introspection. In London, a person might sit alone at a window seat, sipping slowly while watching the city awaken. In Buenos Aires, friends could meet in a small cafe, laughing softly, exchanging stories, sharing the comfort of warmth and conversation. In Addis Ababa, families maintained centuries-old coffee ceremonies, preserving the tactile, sensory experience of roasting, grinding, and brewing. Everywhere the habit of coffee remained a constant, a quiet rhythm amid the changing patterns of daily life. Yet, even with all this global accessibility, the simplicity of coffee's core ritual remained. It was about warmth, aroma, taste, and presence. People could enjoy it in high-tech machines or over open flames in minimalist cafes or cozy kitchens. The essence of coffee, the connection to history, the deliberate act of preparation, the pause it offered, remained unaltered. It was a reminder that, despite the speed of modern life, small rituals could provide grounding, calm, and continuity. In the early decades of the 21st century, coffee continued to evolve. Third wave coffee culture emphasized quality, sustainability, and a deeper connection to origin. Farmers, roasters, and baristas collaborated more closely than ever, highlighting the care and craft that went into each cup. In cities, cafes became not only spaces for socialization but also laboratories for experience. Pour, over demonstrations, sensory tastings, and slow, deliberate brewing that invited reflection. For the consumer, this evolution transformed drinking coffee into an immersive, mindful act. Every sip carried history, craftsmanship, and human connection. Across remote regions, coffee cultivation remained intimately tied to daily life and community. Farmers in Rwanda, Ethiopia, and Guatemala tended small plots with patience, observing the growth of each shrub, harvesting cherries with care, and processing them with respect for tradition. Communities often gathered during harvest seasons, sharing work, stories, and meals, reinforcing both social bonds and the deep relationship between humans and the land. Coffee was not only a product to sell, it was a ritual, a marker of seasons, and a shared element of life. Even in modern urban spaces, coffee continues to connect people to these origins. Specialty cafés prominently share the story of the beans, the farmer's name, the region, the altitude, and the processing method. Patrons sip slowly, not only tasting the drink, but participating in a centuries-long narrative that spans continents and cultures. Every cup becomes a quiet meditation on human history, agriculture, trade, and ritual. A bridge between the present moment and centuries of discovery. In addition to its cultural and personal significance, coffee plays a subtle role in shaping creativity, thought, and reflection. Artists, writers, and thinkers continue to rely on its gentle energy. A cup of coffee may accompany a blank page, a canvas, a notebook, or a quiet piano, offering focus, patience, and a rhythm that mirrors centuries of tradition. Even as the world grows faster, coffee provides a slow cadence, a grounding anchor, and a connection to human curiosity and endurance. Across the globe, from metropolitan skylines to rural highlands, coffee remains a companion to daily life. Its presence in homes, cafes, and workplaces reflects not only utility but also intimacy, culture, and reflection. People carry the habit forward in private and communal spaces, preserving the rituals that originated centuries ago in highland Ethiopia, yet adapting them to modern rhythms. Each cup, each moment, and each aroma carries a story of discovery, cultivation, trade, preparation, and human connection. And so, the story of coffee in the 21st century is both global and intimate. It is found in bustling cities and quiet villages, in high-tech cafes and centuries-old ceremonies, in the morning rituals of families and the creative work of individuals. It is a drink, a habit, a pause, and a bridge across time. From the highlands of Ethiopia to the world's largest metropolises, coffee has travelled far, yet its essence remains constant warmth, reflection, and connection. Even as coffee spread across the globe, the simple act of making it remained central to its story. In homes, cafes, and small farms alike, people learned to respect the process, understanding that each step contributed to the flavour, aroma, and warmth of the final cup. From the moment the cherries were harvested to the instant the coffee touched the lips of a drinker, the journey was deliberate, slow, and quietly transformative. It all began in the fields. Coffee plants, whether in Ethiopia's highlands, Colombia's mountains, or Indonesia's volcanic slopes, required careful attention. Farmers observed the shrubs daily, noting the color of the leaves, the ripeness of the cherries, and the subtle changes brought by sun, rain, and soil. In Ethiopia, a farmer might rise early, walking between rows of shrubs as the morning mist lifts from the hills. The air would be cool and fragrant with earth and vegetation. They would examine the cherries, plucking only those that were fully red, bright, and firm. Less ripe cherries were left on the plant to mature in their own time. This patient selection ensured that each harvest captured the essence of the plant at its peak. Once harvested, the cherries were carefully processed. In some regions, this meant washing the fruit in streams or shallow tanks, allowing the pulp to ferment just enough for the flavors to develop, while still preserving the beans inside. In other regions, the cherries were dried in the sun, laid out on mats or raised drying beds, and turned regularly to ensure even drying. The sun-warmed beans gradually lost moisture, slowly preparing for the next stage of transformation. Farmers moved with care, ensuring that the drying process did not rush the beans, that each one was nurtured with attention, and that every step maintained the quality that would ultimately define the flavor. Once the beans were fully dried, they were hulled, removing the outer fruit to reveal the green coffee beans within. This was often done by hand in small communities, with tools designed for gentle extraction, or with carefully calibrated machines in larger plantations. The beans were cleaned, sorted, and inspected, each one examined for imperfections. Only those that met the standards were kept for roasting. The rest might be set aside or used locally, ensuring that the final product remained consistent, aromatic, and flavorful. Roasting was and remains one of the most transformative steps in coffee preparation. In a small home, a farmer or household member might roast beans over an open fire or in a pan, shaking continuously to prevent burning and to ensure even heat. The smell of roasting coffee began to fill the air, the rich, nutty aroma that has come to symbol warmth, comfort, and energy. The beans gradually changed color, moving from green to pale brown, then to darker shades as oils slowly emerged. Each stage of roasting required careful attention. Too short, and the beans would be underdeveloped. Too long, and they could become bitter. This slow, deliberate process shaped the body, flavor, and aroma of the coffee, and it was often accompanied by quiet focus, patience, and experience passed down through generations. Once roasted, the beans were cooled and sometimes stored for later use. Grinding came next, another step requiring attention and care. In traditional homes, a mortar and pestle might be used, crushing beans into a coarse or fine powder, depending on the brewing method. In cafes or modern kitchens, grinders allowed for more precision, ensuring that each batch was uniform. The grind size influenced how the water extracted flavors. Coarse for slow methods like French press, medium for drip coffee, and fine for espresso. Even this seemingly small step demanded mindfulness, for it determined the character of the drink that would follow. Brewing itself was where all the care and patience came together. Water temperature, ratio of water to coffee, and steeping time were crucial. In traditional Ethiopian ceremonies, the ground coffee was simmered in small clay pots over a gentle flame, often 3 times in a row to create a layered flavor. In a French press, water poured over the grounds was allowed to steep slowly, releasing a deep, rich body. In espresso machines, hot water forced through finely ground coffee at high pressure created a concentrated, aromatic shot. Pour-over methods required a delicate rhythm, with water flowing steadily and evenly over grounds, extracting subtle floral or fruity notes. The process was almost meditative, a dance between hands, water, and beans, producing a drink that was both simple and profoundly satisfying. Even the serving and consumption of coffee carried ritual and care. In a quiet home, a cup might be placed on a small saucer, steam rising gently, aroma curling into the room. In cafes, the drink was presented with attention to temperature, creamer, and appearance. Some places added milk, foam, or sugar, creating subtle variations, yet the core experience remained the same: warmth, aroma, flavor, and presence. Every sip reminded the drinker of the long journey, the sun and rain that nurtured the plant, the hands that harvested, dried, and roasted the beans, the attention that ground and brewed them. It was a small, intimate connection to the centuries of human care and tradition that had made coffee a worldwide habit. Even modern convenience did not diminish the essence of coffee making. Capsule machines, automated brewers, and instant powders allowed people to enjoy the drink quickly, yet many still preserved rituals, measuring carefully, observing steam, inhaling aroma, and pausing for the first sip. Some paused to notice the color of the liquid, the swirl as it mixed with milk, or the gentle warmth of the cup. Across homes, offices, and cafes, the act of preparing coffee remained both practical and meditative, a quiet bridge between daily routine and human connection. Coffee making also had a social dimension. In many cultures, the preparation itself became a shared experience. Families roasted beans together in small ceremonies, friends ground and brewed in quiet kitchens, and communities participated in harvest and processing festivals. Each stage was an opportunity for connection, the slow washing of cherries, the careful turning of drying beans, the rhythmic grinding of the roast, the careful pouring of hot water over grounds. The process created calm, focus and continuity, linking people not only to each other but also to generations of tradition. Even the smallest details mattered: the sound of beans cracking as they roasted, the sight of steam rising from a freshly brewed cup, the smell of aroma filling a kitchen or cafe. These sensory cues were part of the experience, signaling warmth, comfort, and presence. Every element, from the field to the cup, contributed to a habit that was both ancient and modern, global yet deeply personal. Coffee's journey from bean to cup also reflected broader patterns of human ingenuity and care. People learned to manipulate fire, water, and pressure to release flavors. They experimented with different plant varieties, growing conditions, and processing methods. They discovered the delicate balance between extraction time and flavor, between temperature and aroma. Each generation refined these techniques, creating a quiet art form rooted in daily practice. Even now, in homes and cafes around the world, coffee preparation continues to embody this careful attention. Whether using centuries-old clay pots, modern espresso machines, or slow drip systems, the essence of making coffee remains constant patience, focus, warmth, and presence. Each cup carries the story of the plant, the care of the farmer, the skill of the roaster and barista, and the quiet anticipation of the drinker. And so, every time someone lifts a cup, inhales the aroma, and takes a slow sip, they participate in a ritual that began centuries ago. They join the herders who first noticed energy in red berries, the monks who stayed awake through the night, the traders who carried beans across oceans, the families and cafe patrons who refined preparation techniques, and the modern baristas and enthusiasts who continue to perfect the craft. Each cup is a living connection to history, a calm, deliberate moment, and a global habit shared across cultures, generations, and continents. And so, as coffee traveled across continents, from the wild highlands of Ethiopia to the bustling streets of European capitals, it began to take on a role far larger than anyone might have imagined. It was no longer just a curious drink or a ritual for monks. It was slowly becoming a habit, a daily companion in lives both ordinary and extraordinary. People began to structure their mornings around it, to pause with it in the quiet moments of their day, and to share it with family, friends, or strangers in cafes and homes. In Yemen, centuries earlier, coffee had already shaped daily rhythm. Monks would sip slowly in the candlelight of early mornings, the warmth and gentle stimulant helping them remain awake and focused during long prayers. Traders carried beans along caravan routes, making stops at markets, towns and ports, introducing people to the drink in new lands. Every cup consumed was an invitation, a moment of focus, reflection, or social connection. By the time coffee reached Istanbul and other Ottoman cities, it had become more than nourishment. It was a cultural habit, a regular part of life, something that people looked forward to each day. As coffee entered Europe, this habit grew in both subtle and profound ways. Cafes in Venice, Vienna, Paris, and London became places where the act of drinking coffee was tied to both routine and ritual. For merchants, it provided energy for work. For writers and artists, it inspired thought and creativity. For families and friends, it was a reason to gather, linger, and share conversation. Slowly, drinking coffee shifted from an occasional indulgence to a steady, daily practice. In homes across Europe, morning cups became common. In the streets and cafes, mid-morning or afternoon breaks became natural pauses in the day. Coffee had become a habit, quietly, steadily, and universally. In the Americas, the habit took on a distinctly modern character. As coffee cultivation expanded in Brazil, Colombia, and the Caribbean, availability increased. People could enjoy coffee not only in cafes but in their own homes, at work, or while traveling. Brands like Folgers, Maxwell House, and later specialty roasters created a familiarity and reliability that reinforced the habit. Families came to rely on coffee in the morning, workplaces integrated it into daily routines, and social interactions often revolved around the simple sharing of a cup. Drinking coffee became a way to structure the day, to mark transitions, and to create a sense of steadiness amidst the pace of modern life. Yet coffee's adoption as a habit was not only about convenience or taste. It was about experience, the warmth of a cup in one's hands, the gentle steam rising, the aroma filling the room, and the slow, mindful sip all created a sensory ritual. People began to associate coffee with calmness, comfort, focus, and connection. It became a companion in quiet moments of solitude, a gentle energizer for work, and a bridge in social interaction. Each cup offered a small, deliberate pause, a ritual that human beings could rely upon day after day, linking body, mind, and habit. Cultural traditions reinforced this worldwide habit. In Italy, the ritual of espresso in the morning, with its precise preparation and small, concentrated portion, became a daily anchor. In Sweden, fika created social structure around coffee breaks, emphasizing calm, conversation, and reflection. In Japan, the meticulous pour-over method elevated the act of brewing into a meditative practice, reinforcing the habit with intention. Across cultures, coffee became both personal and social, a rhythm of life that people could return to, again and again. Brands, too, played a role in cementing coffee as a habit. In Europe and the Americas, recognizable names like Lavazza, Illy, Folgers, and Maxwell House offered reliability, quality, and a sense of familiarity. Consumers came to expect a certain flavor, aroma, and experience with each cup. This consistency allowed coffee to integrate seamlessly into daily life. It was not just a drink, but a dependable companion, a small ritual that people could trust to start the day, punctuate work, or mark quiet reflection. Specialty roasters later added a new dimension, emphasizing origin, quality, and sustainability. Even as coffee became global, the habit was preserved and enhanced. Drinkers learned to savor flavors, explore new roasts, and connect with the history of the beans. Coffee's worldwide habit also spread through social spaces. Cafes became hubs of interaction, both casual and intellectual. In Europe, writers, thinkers, and students lingered over books and conversations. In the Americas, cafes hosted business meetings, casual gatherings, and quiet moments of reflection. In Asia, drinking cultures adopted coffee into their urban rhythms, creating spaces where both quiet contemplation and socialization could occur. Across continents, coffee created a universal language, a simple, shared ritual that people could engage in anywhere, anytime. Even at home, the habit was profound. Morning cups became almost sacred, signaling the start of a day. Midday coffee provided rhythm and focus. Evening coffee, though lighter in some cultures, offered reflection or companionship. For many, coffee became intertwined with memory. The aroma of beans roasting reminded one of family mornings. A shared cup with friends evoked conversation, laughter, or comfort. The habit of coffee became deeply embedded, shaping personal routines and collective culture simultaneously. Education and awareness also strengthened the habit. Books, magazines, and later websites and social media taught people about origins, brewing techniques, and cultural traditions. People learned to prepare coffee with care, to appreciate subtle flavors, and to savor the ritual. Knowledge reinforced habit when a cup of coffee became an opportunity for sensory pleasure, reflection, or connection. The habit was not only repeated, it was cherished. By the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the global habit of coffee was firmly established. In every major city and countless small towns and villages, people integrated coffee into their routines. Coffee houses proliferated, both large chains and small independent cafes, offering consistency, comfort, and social interaction. Coffee at home remained a deeply personal practice, whether prepared through traditional methods, modern machines, or instant products. Across continents, centuries of cultivation, trade, preparation, and cultural integration culminated in a daily ritual that millions of people relied upon, enjoyed, and shared. The habit of coffee was reinforced by its ability to meet human needs on multiple levels. It provided mild stimulation, warmth, flavor, and aroma. It created a sense of structure and continuity. It became a companion to reflection, creativity, conversation, and calm. The ritual of preparation, grinding, brewing, pouring, and sipping, offered mindfulness, presence, and small, deliberate moments of pause. It was a habit that nurtured both body and mind, subtly shaping the rhythms of life in homes, workplaces, and social spaces alike. Even now, coffee continues to grow as a worldwide habit. New generations inherit not only the taste for the beverage but also the traditions, rituals, and personal experiences associated with it. Specialty coffee shops teach mindfulness through brewing methods. Families pass down home rituals of roasting, grinding, and brewing. Businesses structure breaks around coffee. Social media highlights coffee as a lifestyle, a pause, a moment of comfort. And everywhere, the same simple qualities remain: warmth, aroma, flavor, and the small, quiet ritual of pausing to enjoy a cup. In essence, coffee became a worldwide habit because it is more than a drink. It is a bridge across time, culture, and geography. It began in the hills of Ethiopia, traveled to Yemen and the Ottoman Empire, spread to Europe and the Americas, and became part of daily life everywhere. Its preparation is deliberate, its consumption comforting, and its presence culturally significant. Each cup is a connection to history, human ingenuity, and shared experience. Across centuries, continents, and generations, coffee has quietly shaped the rhythm of life, offering a ritual that is steady, calming, and deeply human. And so as you sit with a warm cup, inhaling the aroma and feeling the gentle weight in your hands, remember this journey. Coffee is a habit born of discovery, nurtured by care, celebrated in ritual, and shared across the world. Each sip is a link to herders in Ethiopian highlands, monks in Yemen, traders and merchants, European cafe patrons, modern baristas, and millions of people enjoying the simple, comforting act of drinking coffee each day. The habit is universal, yet intimately personal, a small, calming thread woven into the fabric of human life. Even as coffee became a recognized part of daily life in Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas, its journey toward becoming a worldwide habit was still unfolding. It was not only about availability or taste. It was about human behavior, culture, and the simple ways people integrated this warm, aromatic drink into the rhythms of life. To understand why coffee became so universal, one must look at the moments it touched ordinary days, the routines it shaped, and the rituals that evolved around it. In the Ottoman Empire, coffee houses continued to thrive through the 17th and 18th centuries. These spaces were remarkable because they offered both calm and connection. People came not only to drink coffee, but also to listen, to converse, and to think. Scholars would read aloud, poets would recite verses, and merchants would discuss business deals, all while sipping from small cups of strong, dark coffee. These gatherings shaped a cultural norms. Coffee was no longer merely a stimulant, it became a reason to pause, a signal to gather and a habitual part of the day. Europe embraced the habit differently, blending curiosity, culture, and commerce. In Venice, coffee was first introduced through trade with the Ottoman Empire. Merchants and nobles, eager to experience exotic flavors, began drinking it in small, elegant cups, often accompanied by pastries or sweets. Soon, cafes emerged as public spaces where anyone could enter, order coffee, and linger. In London, coffee houses became centers of learning and debate. By the 18th century, these establishments were sometimes referred to as penny universities, where for the price of a cup of coffee, one could access conversation, knowledge, and social interaction. The habit of drinking coffee became intertwined with intellect, reflection, and daily routine. Paris, too, embraced coffee, and its cafes became cultural landmarks. Writers, artists, and thinkers would sit for hours discussing philosophy, art, and literature over steaming cups. Here, coffee was both a personal companion and a social facilitator. fostering habits of thoughtful conversation and contemplation. These European traditions of daily coffee consumption set the stage for the habit's global spread, teaching people that a simple beverage could structure their day, provide comfort, and create connection. As coffee crossed the Atlantic, the Americas contributed their own unique rhythm to the habit. In Brazil, the expansion of coffee plantations in the 18th and 19th centuries made the drink more widely available. Families incorporated coffee into breakfasts. Workplaces adopted it to sustain energy and focus, and cafes became neighborhood fixtures. In the United States, commercial brands like Folgers, Maxwell House, and later regional roasters made it easy to consume coffee at home. Measuring brewing and sipping became part of the morning routine, a comforting and dependable start to the day. Over time, coffee evolved from a special indulgence into a daily ritual. This shift from occasional consumption to habitual use was influenced by several factors. First, accessibility. Coffee was increasingly affordable and easy to prepare. Second, social influence. Cafes, workplaces, and homes established norms of regular consumption. Third, sensory pleasure. The aroma, warmth, and taste provided a consistently satisfying experience. And finally, cognitive and physiological effects. The mild stimulant properties of caffeine helped people remain alert and focused, subtly reinforcing the habit through both comfort and utility. The Industrial Revolution accelerated coffee's rise as a global habit. Mass production, canning, vacuum, sealing, and later instant coffee made the drink available to millions. By the 19th century, coffee was a household staple in Europe and the Americas. People structured their days around it: a morning cup on waking, mid-morning breaks, afternoon pauses, and even light evening servings. In some cultures, coffee became part of daily rhythm, a small, dependable moment in otherwise busy lives. Meanwhile, the sensory experience of coffee continued to anchor it as a habit. The smell of roasted beans, the sound of grinding, the warmth of a cup, and the slow unfolding of flavor all created moments of presence. Families would awaken to the gentle aroma filling the kitchen, colleagues would gather around communal pots in offices, and cafe patrons would sip quietly, immersed in thought or conversation. These sensory and social rituals reinforced the habit, making coffee not just a beverage, but a daily practice that shaped the way people lived. Cultural traditions also contributed to coffee's habitual nature. In Scandinavia, the tradition of fika emphasized daily coffee breaks as both a social and reflective ritual. In Italy, espresso became a structured habit: a brief, concentrated cup taken at specific times, often standing at a bar, a personal and social ritual intertwined. In Japan, meticulous pour-over methods cultivated mindfulness and precision, emphasizing the care and attention inherent in every cup. Across continents, these culturally specific habits reinforced the universality of coffee, a shared human experience adapted to local rhythms. Commercial branding reinforced the habit as well. Italian companies like Lavazza and Illy promoted consistent, high-quality beans, teaching consumers to trust flavor, aroma, and preparation. In the United States, Folgers and Maxwell House became synonymous with home coffee rituals, packaging convenience with reliability. Later, specialty roasters encouraged consumers to explore single-origin beans, blends, and brewing methods, deepening engagement and reinforcing the daily habit through curiosity, education, and sensory pleasure. Cafes continue to anchor coffee as a social and habitual practice. In Vienna, the long-standing tradition of cafe culture emphasized lingering, conversation, and reading. In Paris, literary cafes linked coffee to creativity and reflection. In New York, the rise of chain cafes combined convenience with ritual, offering a familiar space where people could pause during the busy workday. Even in small towns and rural communities, cafes became gathering points, fostering habits of social interaction, reflection, and daily structure. Home rituals also evolved alongside cafe culture. The preparation of coffee at home, measuring beans, boiling water, using drip machines or French presses, remained a personal habit, a quiet act of care and mindfulness. In some households, roasting and grinding were performed manually, connecting modern drinkers to centuries-old practices. The habit of coffee thus existed both in public and private spaces, shaping life quietly and profoundly. As the 20th century progressed, coffee habits became globalized. Migration, trade, and technology introduced coffee to new regions. In Asia, urban centers adopted coffee culture alongside traditional tea drinking habits, blending global influence with local customs. In Africa, home and cafe traditions coexisted, emphasizing both communal enjoyment and personal ritual. In Latin America, daily coffee consumption remained deeply connected to cultural and agricultural identity, reinforcing a bond between people, land, and ritual. Throughout this global expansion, coffee maintained its dual role as both a stimulant and a comfort. Its mild caffeine content provided energy and focus, reinforcing habitual use, while its warmth, flavor, and aroma created moments of calm and presence. People came to rely on coffee not just for taste, but for structure. Morning cups signaling awakening, midday cups signaling pause, and evening cups providing reflection. Habit and comfort intertwined, establishing coffee as an indispensable part of daily life. Brands continued to shape the global habit, introducing convenience, consistency, and accessibility. In the United States, Maxwell House and Folgers made coffee easy for homes and workplaces. In Italy, Lavazza and Illy emphasized tradition and quality. Specialty roasters encouraged exploration and sensory engagement. The variety of options allowed coffee to become both universal and personal, a habit adaptable to individual taste, schedule, and culture. The sensory dimension of coffee reinforced the habit in subtle ways. The aroma of roasting beans or fresh grounds triggers memory and anticipation. The warmth of a cup in the hands provides comfort and grounding. The taste, from bitter to sweet or fruity to chocolatey, offers pleasure and stimulation. These sensory cues created strong associative habits. The smell of coffee could prompt waking, focus, or reflection. The sound of water dripping into a cup could signal pause. The first sip could mark a moment of calm. Across time and space, these small experiences cemented coffee as a daily companion. By the 21st century, coffee had fully achieved its status as a worldwide habit. Chain cafes, independent roasters, home brewing, and global brands coexisted, allowing people to engage with coffee in ways suited to their lifestyle. The habit persisted because it offered structure, sensory pleasure, social connection, and cultural continuity. Coffee became more than a drink. It was a rhythm, a comfort, and a quiet constant in lives everywhere. Even modern innovations, single-serve capsules, high-tech espresso machines, mobile apps for ordering, and specialty brewing tools reinforced the habit. They made coffee more accessible while preserving ritual. Whether in a small apartment, a bustling cafe, or a workplace break room, people continued to measure, grind, brew, pour, and sip with care. The habit of coffee endured, unchanged in essence even as its forms evolved. The global habit of coffee also shaped identity and culture. In Europe, cafes became associated with intellectual life. In the Americas, coffee represented both comfort and productivity. In Asia, urban cafes introduced modern rituals, blending traditional tea drinking practices with global coffee culture. Across Africa, the ceremony of coffee remained tied to family, community, and heritage. Coffee's presence in homes, cafes, workplaces, and public spaces created a shared human habit, rooted in centuries of history and daily practice. And so, from its humble origins in Ethiopia, through Yemen, the Ottoman Empire, Europe, and the Americas, to its global ubiquity today, coffee became a worldwide habit not by chance, but through centuries of careful cultivation, preparation, cultural integration, and human attachment. It shaped mornings, structured days, inspired reflection, fostered connection, and became a quiet, reliable companion in countless lives. Each cup we drink today carries centuries of history, geography, culture, and ritual. It connects us to herders, traders, monks, farmers, roasters, baristas, café patrons, and millions of ordinary people who, generation after generation, embraced coffee as a daily habit. Its warmth, aroma, flavor, and ritual endure as reminders that some of life's simplest pleasures, measured, repeated, and shared, can become the most universal and enduring. Have you ever paused for a moment to notice the aroma of coffee in the air or the gentle warmth of a cup resting in your hands? That simple pleasure carries a story spanning centuries, continents, and countless human lives. A story of how coffee transformed from an exotic curiosity into a worldwide habit, shaping routines, rituals, and cultures everywhere. The journey of coffee truly begins in the highlands of Ethiopia. The land itself, rolling hills, fertile soil, and misty mornings, nurtured the first coffee shrubs. Shepherds noticed that after their goats grazed on bright red cherries, they became unusually lively. Local communities soon observed similar effects and began experimenting with the fruit. Initially, coffee was consumed in its simplest form. The beans might be chewed raw, ground into coarse paste, or lightly roasted over fire. These early experiments laid the foundation for centuries of discovery, preparation, and ritual. From Ethiopia, coffee traveled south across the Red Sea to Yemen, where it became more than an occasional stimulant. Sufi monks discovered its value for long nights of prayer and meditation. They developed techniques to roast and grind the beans, then boil them in water, producing a drink that could sustain focus while also offering warmth and comfort. In the cities of Yemen, particularly around Mocha, coffee cultivation began to flourish. This period marked a turning point. Coffee shifted from a local curiosity to a cultivated crop, traded along caravan routes, and increasingly consumed in daily life. The spread of coffee to the Ottoman Empire introduced new cultural dimensions. In cities like Istanbul, coffee houses appeared as communal spaces where people could gather, converse, and drink together. Patrons read poetry, discussed politics, or simply enjoyed the company of others while savoring the rich, dark beverage. These spaces shaped the habit of coffee drinking in a social context, embedding it into daily rhythms and routines. The ritual of preparation, roasting, grinding, boiling, and serving reinforced a connection to the drink, the process, and the shared experience. Europe entered the scene in the 17th century. Venice, due to its extensive trade networks, became one of the first European cities to embrace coffee. Merchants and nobles sampled the exotic brew, intrigued by its stimulating effects and unique flavor. Soon, cafes began appearing in other parts of Italy and eventually in London, Paris, and Vienna. In London, coffee houses became centers of intellectual life. Patrons called them penny universities, because for the price of a cup, one could join discussions, read newspapers, and engage with ideas. Here, coffee was more than a drink. It was a facilitator of thought, conversation, and daily routine. Parisian cafes nurtured similar habits. Writers and artists lingered for hours, discussing literature, art, and philosophy over steaming cups. The ritual of coffee consumption, selecting a blend, observing the brewing process, inhaling the aroma, and sipping mindfully, became an integral part of cultural life. Coffee was no longer occasional. It had woven itself into daily practice, creating pauses in the day for reflection, creativity, and social interaction. The Dutch contributed to coffee's global proliferation through cultivation in Asia. They introduced coffee plants to Java, Indonesia, establishing plantations that produced large quantities of beans for export to Europe. Java's climate and fertile soil proved ideal, and the Dutch refined cultivation techniques, ensuring consistency in flavor and supply. The name Java became synonymous with coffee itself, reflecting both the region's influence and the role of trade in spreading the habit globally. In the Americas, coffee took on its own identity. French colonists transported plants to Martinique, from where they spread throughout the Caribbean and South America. Brazil emerged as a powerhouse, with vast plantations producing smooth, nutty beans that would become a staple worldwide. Colombian coffee also gained recognition for its balance, acidity, and aroma. The Americas combined large-scale production with a developing coffee culture, allowing the drink to become both a commercial product and a daily ritual. By the 19th and 20th centuries, coffee brands emerged that would define the daily habit for millions. In Italy, Lavazza and Illy emphasized quality, blending beans from multiple regions to create consistent flavor profiles suitable for espresso and home consumption. In the United States, Maxwell House and Folgers made coffee convenient and approachable, encouraging its integration into morning routines, workplace breaks, and social gatherings. These brands were more than products, they were instruments of habit, teaching people how to brew, savor, and enjoy coffee daily. The sensory experience of coffee reinforced its habitual nature. The aroma of roasting beans filled kitchens and cafes alike, signaling comfort, focus, and anticipation. Grinding beans created rhythm and connection, a tactile engagement that prepared the mind and body for the ritual ahead. The warmth of a cup in the hands offered physical grounding, while the taste, ranging from sweet and floral to bold and chocolatey, rewarded the senses. These small, repeated pleasures ensured that coffee was not just a drink, but a moment to pause, reflect, and engage with the world. Cultural rituals further strengthened the habit. In Italy, espresso became a structured part of daily life, a short, concentrated cup in the morning. Another after meals, often consumed standing at the bar. In Sweden, Fika emphasized daily coffee breaks as opportunities for socializing and reflection, making the habit both communal and restorative. In Japan, precision brewing methods transformed coffee preparation into a meditative act, teaching mindfulness and care. Across cultures, the simple act of drinking coffee became a shared human experience, adaptable to local customs, yet universally comforting. The 20th century brought innovations that deepened the habit. Instant coffee, created for convenience and mobility, allowed soldiers, travelers, and urban workers to access coffee quickly. Percolators, drip machines, and later single-serve capsules simplified preparation at home, yet retained the ritual of measurement, pouring, and sipping. Specialty roasters encourage exploration of single-origin beans, highlighting the relationship between flavor origin and preparation technique. Each development reinforced coffee's integration into daily life, maintaining its role as both sustenance and ritual. Cafes continued to play a critical role in reinforcing the global habit. Vienna's long-standing tradition emphasized lingering, conversation, and intellectual engagement. Parisian literary cafes fostered creativity and contemplation. In New York and other major cities, chain cafes offered both convenience and ritual, becoming daily stops for commuters, workers, and friends. Across urban and rural settings alike, coffee houses provided a space for connection, reflection, and the reinforcement of habit. Home rituals also evolved alongside these public spaces. Families learned to brew coffee using drip machines, French presses, or traditional pots. Measuring beans, observing the water temperature, and waiting for the perfect extraction became moments of mindfulness. Some households roasted their own beans, connecting modern drinkers to centuries-old practices. Even simple routines, pouring water over grounds, inhaling aroma, taking the first sip, reinforced a sense of calm, structure, and continuity. By the late 20th and early 21st centuries, coffee had achieved full global integration. Urban centers across Asia adopted cafes, blending traditional tea rituals with coffee culture. Africa maintained home and community traditions while integrating international practices. Latin America celebrated coffee both as a cultural identity and a daily necessity. Europe and the Americas balanced commercial availability with artisanal exploration, creating spaces and routines that honored both convenience and craft. Across continents, coffee was no longer merely a beverage. It had become a habit, embedded in daily life, social interaction, and personal ritual. Brands continued to guide the habit, offering reliability and quality. Lavazza, Illy, Folgers, Maxwell House, and specialty roasters provided choices that fit different lifestyles and tastes. Coffee became adaptable to time, place, and circumstance, a quick morning cup for one, a leisurely afternoon ritual for another, or a social centerpiece for groups. The habit was flexible yet consistent, rooted in sensory pleasure, daily rhythm, and cultural norms. The physiological and psychological effects of coffee reinforced its habitual nature. The mild stimulation of caffeine improved alertness, focus and energy, subtly encouraging regular consumption. Simultaneously, the warmth, flavor, and aroma created moments of calm and comfort. People came to rely on these small rituals, integrating coffee into work, study, socialization, and relaxation. The habit persisted because it met both practical and emotional needs, connecting body, mind, and culture. Modern innovations expanded the reach of coffee without diminishing its role as a habit. High-tech espresso machines pour over tools, and cold brew methods diversified preparation. Mobile ordering apps and subscription services made coffee accessible virtually anywhere. Despite these conveniences, the essence of the ritual remained: measure, grind, brew, pour, and sip. Each step continued to provide sensory engagement, personal reflection, and a momentary pause from the demands of daily life. Globalization further embedded coffee as a universal habit. Migrants, travelers, and international trade spread both beans and culture. Coffee houses in urban centers worldwide became places of cross-cultural interaction, conversation, and community. Home rituals persisted across continents, connecting individuals to the centuries of tradition that preceded them. Coffee was simultaneously local and global, intimate and shared, personal and cultural, a habit that transcended borders. Throughout the 21st century, coffee culture continued to evolve, yet its core role remained unchanged: structuring daily life, fostering reflection, facilitating social interaction, and providing comfort. Specialty cafes introduced latte art, highlighting skill and aesthetics. Educational programs and workshops taught brewing techniques, roasting processes, and tasting skills. Social media showcased rituals, sharing experiences of coffee preparation, appreciation, and cultural practices. Each of these developments reinforced the habit, adding layers of engagement, awareness, and pleasure. Coffee's journey from a wild Ethiopian shrub to a global habit exemplifies human connection, innovation, and culture. Every cup consumed today carries the legacy of discovery, cultivation, preparation, and shared experience. It links herders, traders, monks, farmers, roasters, baristas, cafe patrons, and everyday drinkers across centuries and continents. The habit of coffee is both historical and personal, cultural and sensory, structured yet adaptable. The worldwide habit of coffee is now embedded in daily routines, cultural practices, and social norms. People rise to morning cups, pause for midday breaks, and engage in reflective evening rituals. Cafes and homes alike nurture connection, mindfulness, and continuity. Brands guide flavor and consistency, while specialty roasters encourage exploration and education. Sensory engagement, aroma, warmth, taste, and texture reinforces the experience. Coffee's role is deeply human, structuring life, creating rhythm, and offering moments of calm and comfort. In every corner of the world, coffee continues to connect people to history, geography, culture, and shared human experience. It is a habit born of centuries of cultivation, preparation, and ritual. Every cup is a story of the land that nurtured the plant, the hands that harvested and roasted the beans, the methods refined across generations, and the people who drink it daily, savoring warmth, aroma, and flavor. Coffee has become more than a beverage. It is a quiet rhythm of life, a daily companion, a social facilitator, and a personal ritual. From the hills of Ethiopia to bustling modern cities worldwide, it has achieved what few foods or drinks can claim: a universal habit, comforting and enduring, shaped by culture, history, and human connection. And so, when you hold a cup in your hands, breathe in the aroma, and take a slow sip, you participate in a habit that spans centuries and continents, a ritual of care, attention, and presence. Coffee is history, culture, and daily life, all gently combined in a moment of calm and reflection. It is a worldwide habit, quietly shaping mornings, afternoons, and evenings, connecting people across space and time, and providing a simple, profound pleasure that endures. A single sip, a familiar aroma, a gentle warmth held in the hands. These are the moments that coffee has provided to billions of people over centuries. Let us continue the journey, tracing how this remarkable drink became woven into daily life across the world. After establishing itself in the Middle East and Europe, coffee continued to migrate across continents in the 17th and 18th centuries. Traders, explorers, and colonists carried seeds and seedlings, carefully cultivating them in new climates. The Dutch had already introduced coffee to Java, but it was the French, Spanish, and Portuguese who expanded coffee production throughout the Caribbean and South America. Islands such as Martinique, Saint Domingue, and Cuba became fertile grounds for coffee plantations. The tropical climates, combined with careful agricultural methods, produced rich, aromatic beans that would eventually travel across oceans to Europe and North America. Brazil, in particular, became a cornerstone of coffee production. In the 18th century, French settlers brought coffee seedlings to the northeastern regions of the country. The climate and geography proved ideal for large-scale cultivation, and by the 19th century, Brazil dominated the global market. Farmers worked diligently, planting, tending, and harvesting the cherry-laden shrubs with precision. The labor-intensive process, often carried out on vast estates, relied on careful timing. Cherries were picked at the peak of ripeness, ensuring quality and consistency. The beans were dried, hulled, and roasted with attention to both tradition and efficiency, creating a supply that would make coffee accessible worldwide. At the same time, Colombia developed a reputation for high-quality coffee, known for its balance and subtle sweetness. The mountainous terrain, with rich volcanic soil and consistent rainfall, provided ideal growing conditions. Colombian farmers, often working on small family plots, cultivated coffee with meticulous care. Each bean carried the essence of the land, the season, and the dedication of those who nurtured it. These regional distinctions contributed to the growing appreciation for coffee as more than a beverage. It was a reflection of geography, climate, and human skill. The rise of commercial coffee brands further embedded the habit into daily life. In Italy, Lavazza, founded in 1895, emphasized blending beans from different regions to create a consistent flavor. Illy, established in 1933, focused on quality and espresso culture, highlighting the subtleties of roasting and preparation. In the United States, Maxwell House and Folgers made coffee convenient and reliable, introducing millions of households to the ritual of brewing, pouring, and sipping. The availability of packaged, roasted coffee allowed people to incorporate it easily into their mornings, workplaces, and social gatherings, reinforcing the habit across generations. While commercial production and global trade were essential, the social and cultural dimensions of coffee consumption played an equally important role. In Ottoman cities, coffee houses were centers of discussion and community, where conversation, music, and news intertwined with the act of drinking. In Europe, cafes became intellectual hubs. In Vienna, patrons spent hours reading newspapers and engaging in debate. Parisian cafes nurtured writers, artists, and philosophers who found inspiration in the quiet, contemplative moments provided by coffee. Across continents, coffee houses created spaces where the act of drinking became a ritual, reinforcing habit and connection. The daily habits surrounding coffee also evolved to include home routines. Families learned to measure beans, boil water, and brew carefully, whether using traditional pots, percolators, or drip machines. The sensory experience, hearing the gurgle of water, inhaling the aroma of freshly ground beans, feeling warmth in the hands, tasting the first sip, created moments of presence and mindfulness. These small, repeated acts ensured that coffee became more than a drink. It was a daily companion, a marker of time, and a source of comfort. Coffee's physiological effects also reinforced its habitual consumption. The mild stimulant properties of caffeine helped people stay awake, focused, and alert, subtly encouraging regular use. Morning rituals developed around this effect, with early cups energizing the body and mind. Midday or afternoon servings created structured pauses, offering both mental clarity and sensory pleasure. Even evening cups, often lighter or decaffeinated, provided reflection and warmth, completing the daily rhythm. Over time, these patterns became deeply ingrained, transforming coffee from an occasional indulgence into an essential part of life. As coffee spread globally, it adapted to local cultures and preferences. In Italy, the espresso became a concise, concentrated ritual, often consumed standing at a cafe counter. In Scandinavia, the concept of fika emphasized coffee as a social habit, a reason to pourverse and connect. In Japan, pour over and siphon brewing highlighted precision, attention, and mindfulness, turning preparation into an art form. In Latin America, coffee consumption intertwined with agricultural identity, family gatherings, and communal meals. Across regions, coffee habits evolved in ways that reflected local values while maintaining the universal qualities of warmth, aroma, flavor, and ritual. The rise of specialty coffee in the late 20th and early 21st centuries added another layer to the global habit. Roasters and cafes began to emphasize origin, processing methods, and flavor profiles. Single origin beans allowed drinkers to experience the unique characteristics of Ethiopian, Colombian, Brazilian, or Indonesian coffee. Brewing methods such as French press, AeroPress, and siphon offered new ways to engage with flavor and aroma. Coffee appreciation became a conscious, deliberate practice, deepening the habitual relationship between drinker and beverage. Modern cafes also introduced social rituals that reinforced habit. Baristas crafted drinks with precision and care, often creating latte art to delight the senses. Patrons lingered for hours, reading, working, or conversing. Coffee became a centerpiece of social life, a reason to meet, collaborate, or relax. The combination of sensory pleasure, skillful preparation, and social connection created a layered experience, strengthening the role of coffee as a daily habit across cultures. At home, rituals continue to evolve. People experimented with different roasts, brewing methods, and even home roasting techniques. Subscription services and online stores made it possible to explore beans from around the world. Brewing became both convenience and ceremony, measuring, grinding, heating, pouring, and savoring each cup. Even in the fast pace of modern life, the act of drinking coffee provided structure, calm, and sensory engagement, reinforcing the habit in both subtle and deliberate ways. Globalization expanded the reach of coffee habits further. Urban centers worldwide adopted cafe culture, blending local traditions with international practices. Migrants and travelers introduced new techniques and flavors, creating hybrid rituals. Home consumption continued, with people adapting brewing methods to suit modern schedules. Coffee habits became simultaneously universal and personal, reflecting centuries of history while accommodating contemporary lifestyles. Brands continued to shape coffee consumption. Lavazza, Illy, Nespresso, Folgers, and Maxwell House offered reliability, convenience, and consistency, while specialty roasters encouraged exploration and sensory awareness. Consumers could choose between a quick morning cup, a leisurely afternoon experience, or a carefully prepared artisan brew. These options reinforced habitual consumption, allowing coffee to remain both a personal ritual and a shared cultural practice. The sensory elements of coffee played a critical role in maintaining habit. The smell of freshly ground beans, the sound of brewing, the warmth of a cup, and the complex flavors engaged multiple senses. Each element created anticipation and satisfaction, reinforcing the daily act. People developed associative habits. Morning aroma signaled awakening, brewing sounds marked focus, and the first sip represented a pause or reward. Through these sensory cues, coffee became intertwined with daily life in a way few other beverages achieved. Cultural, social, and commercial factors combined to solidify coffee as a global habit. Coffee houses created public rituals and social spaces. Cafes and bars provided structured opportunities for reflection, work, and conversation. Home brewing established personal routines. Brands offered consistency and reliability, and sensory engagement encouraged repeated use. Across continents, coffee became both a global connector and an intimate companion, structuring days, fostering presence, and offering comfort. The role of coffee in shaping modern life is profound. In workplaces, It marks the beginning of tasks, energizes the mind, and facilitates collaboration. In social settings, it encourages dialogue, bonding, and shared enjoyment. At home, it structures morning and evening routines, offering moments of calm and reflection. Across all contexts, coffee integrates with human behavior, supporting focus, connection, and habit. In addition to its daily role, coffee carries historical and cultural significance. Every cup reflects centuries of cultivation, trade, preparation, and consumption. Ethiopian herders, Yemeni monks, Ottoman traders, European merchants, Brazilian farmers, Colombian growers, Italian baristas, and modern coffee enthusiasts all contribute to the shared narrative. Drinking coffee connects us to this history, making the habit a living tradition, experienced anew with each sip. Even with modern technology, the essence of coffee rituals remains unchanged. High-tech espresso machines, single-serve systems, cold brew methods, and automated grinders streamline preparation but retain the fundamental steps: measure, grind, brew, pour, sip. The sensory and emotional experiences, the smell, warmth, and taste, remain central. Habit persists because the act of drinking coffee continues to provide structure, calm, and presence, integrating past, present, and human culture into daily life. Coffee's journey also highlights human adaptability and ingenuity. Across centuries, people refined cultivation, roasting, and brewing methods. They developed cafes, created brands, and designed rituals that reinforced daily practice. They discovered new origins, experimented with flavors, and celebrated the sensory experience. Coffee's global habit is a testament to how a simple plant and beverage can shape culture, routine, and social connection. In modern society, coffee remains both personal and communal. Individuals maintain home rituals, selecting beans, roasting, and brewing according to taste and schedule. Communities engage in cafes, sharing conversation, study, or quiet reflection. Global brands, specialty roasters, and local cafes ensure availability and quality, while innovations allow customization and exploration. Through these practices, coffee continues to structure life, offering habitual comfort, sensory pleasure, and a connection to centuries of shared experience. The universal appeal of coffee lies in its combination of practicality, pleasure, and ritual. Its mild stimulation supports alertness and focus, while warmth, aroma, and flavor provide comfort. Daily routines, morning cups, midday pauses, afternoon indulgences, structure time and create continuity. Social interactions, cafes, offices, and gatherings reinforce connection. Cultural traditions, espresso in Italy, fika in Sweden, pour over in Japan, community coffee in Africa, sustain local identity. All of these elements converge to make coffee a global habit, persistent, comforting, and enduring. The journey of coffee from Ethiopia to Yemen, across the Ottoman Empire, Europe, the Americas, and beyond illustrates how a simple drink can influence daily life, culture, and social norms. Each step, from cultivation, harvesting, roasting, and grinding to brewing, pouring, and sipping, requires attention, care, and mindfulness. The habit is built on centuries of discovery, innovation, and human engagement. It is a rhythm, a ritual, and a quiet anchor in everyday life. As you settle in, perhaps with a cup nearby, consider how the aroma and warmth of coffee has traveled across centuries, continents, and countless hands before reaching you. Have you ever wondered how a simple bean became such a profound part of daily life, shaping routines and rituals around the world? Let's explore the final chapter of this journey, tracing the full path of coffee as a worldwide habit. After centuries of cultivation and trade, coffee had firmly established itself in Europe, the Americas, and parts of Asia. Yet the 20th century introduced innovations and cultural shifts that made the habit more universal than ever. Mass production, instant coffee, drip machines, and single-serve capsules made it possible for almost anyone to enjoy a cup at any time of day. Coffee no longer depended solely on cafes or local roasters. It became a companion in homes, offices, and travel. People could rely on coffee to structure mornings, provide focus during work, or offer comfort in quiet reflection. In Europe, espresso culture remained central to daily habits. In Italy, espresso was not just a drink, but a ritual: small, concentrated cups taken at precise moments, before work, after meals, or during brief pauses in the day. Each cup was carefully measured, brewed, and consumed in a ritual that reinforced both personal rhythm and cultural identity. Cafes served as extensions of the home, where patrons could pause, observe, and interact with neighbors, friends, or strangers. The combination of personal ritual and social experience created a deeply ingrained habit, one that spread to cafes and homes worldwide. In Scandinavia, coffee culture emphasized the social dimension. The Swedish concept of fika encouraged multiple daily breaks, pairing coffee with conversation and sometimes pastries. These pauses were intentional moments of rest and reflection, fostering both social bonds and personal habit. Coffee became a shared rhythm in daily life, a way to structure work, relationships, and leisure. Norway, Finland, and Denmark adopted similar practices, emphasizing quality, sensory engagement, and community, reinforcing coffee's global habit through culturally specific routines. In the Americas, coffee's integration into daily life was both practical and cultural. In the United States, commercial brands like Folgers and Maxwell House had long made coffee a household staple. By the mid-20th century, the rise of diner culture and chain cafes further embedded coffee into routines, offering both accessibility and familiarity. People began to associate coffee with energy, focus, and comfort, creating habits around consumption at home, work, and in public spaces. In Latin America, the connection between agriculture, local identity, and daily consumption remained strong. Families and communities relied on coffee both as nourishment and as a ritual, linking the drink to heritage, environment, and shared experience. Asia introduced new dimensions to coffee habits. Japan, known for precision and mindfulness, embraced pour, over, and siphon brewing as both practical and meditative practices. Urban centers such as Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto developed cafe culture, blending Western influence with local aesthetics. Coffee became a part of daily life, not just a beverage, but a deliberate act of focus and presence. South Korea followed a similar path, integrating coffee into both modern urban lifestyles and social interactions, making cafe spaces of comfort, work, and connection. The rise of specialty coffee from the late 20th century onward added another layer to global habits. Roasters emphasized single, origin beans, highlighting the unique flavors and aromas of specific regions. Ethiopia, Colombia, Brazil, and Indonesia became celebrated not just for production, but for the experience of tasting and appreciating coffee. Consumers learned to evaluate aroma, body, acidity, and aftertaste, making coffee consumption both an intellectual and sensory habit. Brewing methods expanded as well. French presses, AeroPress, pour over, cold brew, siphon, and high-tech espresso machines offered new ways to engage with the drink, deepening personal rituals and reinforcing habitual engagement. Modern cafes played an essential role in sustaining global habits. Baristas trained in craft and precision offered beverages that combined flavor, aesthetics, and experience. Latte art, careful extraction, and attention to presentation turned each cup into a sensory event. Patrons lingered for work, study, or conversation, creating a rhythm of daily life centered around coffee. Small independent cafes and global chains coexisted, ensuring accessibility while celebrating craft, culture, and ritual. Coffee houses became hubs for social engagement, reflection, and cultural exchange, reinforcing habit in both communal and individual contexts. Home consumption continued to evolve alongside public spaces. People experimented with different roasts, blends, and brewing methods, often purchasing beans directly from roasters or specialty shops. Subscription services made it easy to explore new origins and flavors, allowing daily routines to incorporate both convenience and discovery. Grinding beans manually, measuring water and coffee, and observing the brewing process created deliberate rituals. The act of pouring, inhaling aroma, and savoring flavor engaged the senses and reinforced presence. Each morning, midday, or evening cup became a personal anchor, a quiet habit grounded in centuries of practice. Technology further cemented coffee as a global habit. Single-serve capsules, automated machines, and app-based ordering made preparation faster, yet still ritualistic. Cold brew systems, precision scales, and temperature-controlled kettles enhanced control and experimentation. Despite these innovations, the fundamental act remained unchanged. A person engages with coffee through sensory, social, and personal practice. The habit persists because it satisfies practical, emotional, and cultural needs simultaneously. Global coffee habits also reflect social and cultural identity. In Europe, cafes maintain intellectual and social traditions. In North America, coffee structures daily routines and fosters community in workplaces and public spaces. In Latin America, coffee links agriculture, culture, and family life. In Asia, it emphasizes mindfulness, aesthetic appreciation, and urban lifestyle. Across Africa, community rituals, preparation techniques, and social sharing continue alongside modern innovations. Coffee adapts to local customs while preserving the universal qualities of aroma, warmth, flavor, and ritual. Commercial branding remains influential in sustaining habitual coffee consumption. Companies such as Lavazza, Illy, Nespresso, Folgers, and Starbucks offer both reliability and inspiration. Consumers can choose from simple, convenient options to highly curated specialty experiences. The combination of sensory satisfaction, social norms, and brand consistency ensures that coffee remains an embedded part of daily life across cultures. The habit thrives because it is flexible, pleasurable, and culturally resonant. Sensory experience underpins the habit of coffee. The aroma of fresh grounds signals attention and anticipation. The warmth of a cup engages touch, creating comfort and grounding. Taste rewards the senses, from sweetness to acidity, bitterness to chocolatey notes, offering pleasure and satisfaction. Even the visual experience, the crema of espresso, the color of poured coffee, latte art, engages the mind and heightens presence. These repeated, sensory-rich moments make coffee a persistent and comforting daily habit worldwide. Social rituals enhance this habit further. Cafes and coffee houses provide spaces for work, study, conversation, and leisure. In some cultures, coffee accompanies meals. In others, it structures the day. Shared experiences, morning meetings, fika breaks, coffee dates, reinforce social bonds and integrate coffee into life patterns. Across continents, these social and cultural practices embed coffee deeply into collective daily behavior, ensuring that it remains both a personal and communal habit. The historical journey of coffee, from Ethiopian highlands to Yemeni ports, Ottoman cities, European capitals, Latin American plantations, and modern urban centers worldwide, reveals the factors behind its global habit. Cultivation and trade, commercial production, cafes, sensory pleasure, social interaction, cultural traditions, and personal rituals all combine to make coffee indispensable in daily life. Its mild stimulation, warmth, flavor, and aroma satisfy practical and emotional needs. Its preparation and consumption provide presence, reflection, and continuity. Modern coffee culture continues to evolve, yet the core habit persists. People explore specialty beans, new brewing methods, and creative presentations, yet the daily practice, measured, brewed, poured, and sipped, remains central. Technology, globalization, and innovation enhance accessibility and personalization, but the underlying patterns, morning ritual, midday pause, evening reflection, social engagement, endure. Coffee remains a quiet companion, a structuring element of daily life, and a bridge across history and culture. Every cup embodies centuries of human effort: farmers who cultivate and harvest with care, traders who transport beans across continents, roasters who refine flavor and aroma, baristas who prepare drinks with precision, and millions of daily drinkers who sustain the habit through repetition and mindfulness. Drinking coffee today connects us to this rich history, allowing each sip to be both personal and universal, a moment of comfort, attention, and presence. Coffee has become a worldwide habit because it satisfies multiple dimensions of human life simultaneously. It offers sensory pleasure, mild stimulation, and emotional comfort. It structures time and daily routines. It fosters social interaction, community, and shared experience. It embodies cultural identity, reflecting local practices and global traditions. It bridges past and present, connecting the drinker to centuries of human discovery, cultivation, and ritual. And so, from the hills of Ethiopia across Yemen, the Ottoman Empire, Europe, the Americas, and Asia, to cafes and homes worldwide today, coffee's journey illustrates the power of a simple beverage to shape daily life, culture, and human habit. Every cup carries history, geography, and shared human experience. Every sip is a continuation of centuries of ritual, preparation, and appreciation. The warmth, aroma, flavor, and quiet presence of coffee create moments of pause, reflection, and connection, a habit that is universal, enduring, and deeply human. As you take your next sip, notice the sensation of warmth in your hands, the gentle aroma, the smooth taste, and the quiet comfort it brings. That small, repeated act links you to herders in Ethiopian highlands, traders in Yemen, cafe patrons in Vienna and Paris, farmers in Brazil and Colombia, baristas in Tokyo and New York, and millions of people around the world who have made coffee part of daily life. It is a habit born of history, sustained by culture, and experienced in the quiet, personal moments of everyday life. Coffee is more than a drink. It is a rhythm, a ritual, a bridge across time and space. It structures mornings, middays, and e-days. It fosters reflection, conversation, and creativity. It offers calm, comfort, and sensory engagement. It is a habit that has traveled the world, evolved across centuries, and become an intimate part of human experience. From the first wild cherries in Ethiopia to the modern cafes, home rituals, and specialty roasters of today, coffee has grown into a global habit, quietly shaping daily life for billions. Its journey reveals the ingenuity, care, and connection that humans bring to food, drink, and ritual. Every cup is a story, a moment, and a link to a shared global heritage.